Hi, my name's I'm the National Development Officer for MATP Special Olympics GB, and I'm also a complex needs teacher at the West Silk in Leeds. In this video, I'm going to be looking at mobility walking and the different ways that you can challenge individuals who are already ambulant and able to walk. To start off with, I've got some different surfaces for your students to try out. This is really for students who are that bit more able and they're able to walk barefoot. This is not advisable for a lot of students because they rely heavily on the ankle, foot and foot support of boots or splints or whatever. If you can do some walking in bare feet, if it is safe to do so, it can be quite rewarding for the individuals. So here, I've just got a few things to show you. We have a bath mat, which is nice and soft with loops in. Then we have something a little bit more challenging, which is a beaded seat cover. I'm not sure if you can get these in the shops anymore, but they do occasionally turn up in second-hand shops, and they can be quite useful. They're a really, really sensory item. And then I have just a couple of metres of chiffon that I picked up from a haberdashery in Leeds Market, which can also feel nice and soft and something to scrunch the toes in. And then finally I have some fake grass. And all these things can provide a really nice sensory feedback and give your students that lovely, much more sensation through their feet and give them more awareness of where their feet are and teach them to look down and observe what they're doing. Some other lovely things, particularly for students who have to do walking wearing boots, is to try and get some sensory experience they can feel through their footwear. So you can get large plastic trays that a lot of people often use for sand playing things in early years settings, and you can fill them with sand, with Rice Krispies, with cornflakes, anything that is crunchy and sensory, to give them that little bit extra feedback to teach that proprioception about where their feet are. Here are a couple more activities that you can use when you're promoting mobility and challenging mobility of some of your students. If you have a look at what we've got in front of us, it's different things for individuals to step over. When you're doing an activity like this, it's very, very important that you have clear, precise and accurate language for what you're expecting them to do. For a lot of the students that I work with who are ambulant, their main problem is looking down and then coordinating themselves to step over. So I only have the whole time you will be doing an activity like this, I would only say look down, step over, and those are the only 4 words that I would use. Otherwise, obviously, then feedback and praise and things like this. So laid out on the floor here is PE equipment. Stepping over items like this is hurdles, links to athletics, and it's just some ideas of how you can use them a little bit differently. So to start off with, I've got some yellow floor markers, and that you are often you'll have in any PE cupboard, mainstream or special school, and these are really good for just laying out on the floor so you've got something for your student to look for, and particularly individuals with autism and sensory processing disorders would find it difficult to go over a threshold. So these activities can be important for life skills such as going upstairs, walking through doorways, climbing up onto buses, all sorts of things like that, as well as the sports link. So I've got some floor markers here that you can ask your student to step over. Here, which works really quite well, is a bocce ramp face down. I found with one of my students that it was much better he has something solid to step over, which I'll explain in a second. So you can step over that. Here we've got just some standard cones with holes in them, and I have to confess I didn't purchase the sticks to go in between the cones. I'm using broom handles. These are quite good because you can, particularly with the larger ones, you've got the choice of the different heights that you can put your hurdles at. The one problem that I found with them is when a student was walking towards them, he wouldn't realise anything was there until the bar hit his shin, and then once the bar hit his shin, then he would lift his foot, but of course by that point his toes are right under. So if you've got a student who is able to identify when to step over based on looking down, these are really good, but just be a little bit cautious with students who wait until they've got some sort of physical barrier before they lift their foot. So those are quite good. Now this last item here is actually an early years piece of equipment, and it's intended to be used as a balance bar. Now I don't have any students, including I can't do it myself, who would be able to use this as a balance bar. But what it did do for me, the reason I bought it was because it solved the problem of my young man who was lifting his foot up underneath the hurdle. As soon as he got that feedback straight away against his toe, he would look down and step up and over. And with the repetition like that, there is a possibility that in time he will associate stepping over something with looking down, and he may be able to step over items that aren't solid. So there's just a few ideas that you can link to hurdles. Some other work you can do with individuals who are ambulant and you want to challenge their stepping is have a series of boxes and things for them to step up onto. It can support separating their feet, so it can support kicking in other MATP and PE activities, and it's also a life skill because it can support using stairs later on. So simply just find stable boxes for your child or young person to step up onto. If you are going to provide support for your child or young person, it's best that you don't hold their hand, but you provide your hand as a stable platform for them to put pressure on, so they can hold you rather than you holding on to them. And you would simply step up. So this is a wooden foot box that was made by a caretaker a number of years ago, and these are simply foam foot boxes that you would use to support a child using an adult-sized toilet. You can get all sorts of different boxes like this from all sorts of places, and they do turn up a lot in charity shops as well, because they often are used for supporting toddlers when they're first using the toilet and they grow out of them quite quickly. So there's one more activity idea, stepping up onto boxes. And finally, if you really do want to challenge your individual, these cushions are often issued to students to support sitting and to, as they're wedge shaped, for them to sit forwards. But the physios can also issue similar cushions because when you stand on them, they're very wobbly. They give great sensory feedback because they're all bobbly as well. They're smooth on one side though if you don't like that. And if somebody stands on one of these, it tests their balance, it tests their proprioception, and it really gets all those stability muscles working, which can be really good if you've got a student who you are able to challenge their balance that little bit more. Sometimes if you've got students walking a specific distance, it really helps to have something concrete for them to walk towards, sort of like a finish line. So this one's a nice feely finish line. It's just a couple of cones with some strips of chiffon tied between it and some bells and a mirror to really make it nice and visual. And you can have a member of staff stood holding this and ringing the bell to encourage students to come towards them when they're doing their mobility tasks. Another good way of challenging ambulant individuals is to get them to reach up for things. If you reach up for something, you're putting your weight right down through your feet and you are challenging your balance and using your core muscles. So I've got just two suggestions. In a lot of schools, you can't dangle things from the ceiling because of fire alarms. So I've made use of two pieces of equipment that we have here at the West Silk. So for your smaller children, you may be able to use an A-frame like this one and hang something like a shiny balloon ball or something with bells on or something they want to reach up, so they can reach up, and then you've got striking in standing, and it's good for mobility because it's challenging them. And if your students are that little bit taller, you can potentially hang something from your hoist, make it go up as high as it can go, and if you've got tracking, then you can put something on there for them to reach up for. It doesn't have to be something that are going to strike, it could be something that they reach for and take. So anything at all that you can use to get them reaching up. If you don't have the use of a tracking hoist in your classroom, you could try and manufacture something yourselves. This is a combination of an old batting tee with just some simple drain pipe and fixings that you would get for a sink into the top of it, so that you can get something that you can hit and you can make it that little bit higher for older students to bat at. And if you had two of these bases with the tap and swing that we saw earlier as well, you could create an A-frame yourselves. But reaching up is a really good way of challenging the core and making sure that an individual is putting their weight through the feet. So there is some more ideas for challenging mobility. And the final little bit of mobility that I just wished to share with you is you can never underestimate the fun of a tunnel. I've just got a couple to show you here. Now neither of these are particularly specialist, I don't think. They're both bought for children's play areas. This one is quite narrow, but these are really good for motivating children to crawl through or commando crawl through if they're a little bit more able on the floor, especially if there's an adult at the other end of the tunnel. And I've also used them for students and put them over students, so they've got something to push down and then climb out of, which again will challenge their weight bearing and challenge their mobility. So there, all squished into one video, a lot of ideas for mobility activities for ambulant students.